It's that accurate. And if you smoke, and if you don't exercise, and if you eat 3 full big meals a day, your clock will go faster. We now know that.
I got the book, and it's called Lifespan.
This is going to cost a lot of money, and it's not going to be around for another few years, and even then, I don't know if I can get it. So what can I do now? Well, if there's one word that you might want to take home with you, it's this one: hormesis. It basically means anything that doesn't kill you will make you stronger and longer lived. We cannot let our bodies become complacent. And it all goes back to that original survival circuit in the early life on the planet. It responded to stress. And if we don't activate it, it just sits there and it doesn't defend the body. So you want to tickle it. But of course, if you step on a snail, it's not going to live longer. It's just going to die. What we want to do is to tickle it. So how do we do that? We give it a little bit of stress. A little bit is good, a lot of it is bad. And there are factors that we've discovered, such as mTOR and AMPK, and the ones that I work on called Sirtuins, that are in all of our bodies that are activated by a bit of hormesis. And there are other ways of activating them, such as with drugs like rapamycin, which is an immunosuppressant, so I don't recommend that. Metformin, I'll talk about in a bit. And I work on these molecules here, what are called NAD boosters. And there's also Resveratrol, which Dr. Schwartz talked about, which was just a proof of concept molecule. We have much better molecules now. So if there's one thing I can tell you in your daily lives to do, after reading thousands of scientific papers and researching a lot of animals and humans, it would be this: eat less often. Not starvation, not malnutrition, not at all. But 3 meals a day with snacks in between, never feeling hungry our whole lives, that's ludicrous. And I don't even know why nutritionists ever recommended that. Naturally, we're supposed to be hungry. And without that, our inbuilt defenses that I just showed you on the slide remain relatively inactive. Our bodies don't fight disease, they don't fight aging. So eat less. What I do, and I don't tell anybody what to do, but what I do is I skip breakfast as best I can, and I eat a late lunch, and sometimes I go all the way to dinner. That works for me. Some people skip 2 or 3 days, sometimes a week. But please, whatever you do, don't always be full. It's craziness, and no wonder we have an obesity epidemic with that attitude. Get up and move. Now, this is not new. You don't need someone from my lab to come and tell you this. But what we've learned is that the reason exercise works so well is because it's activating these longevity genes. And with small molecules that we found, such as these NAD boosters and resveratrol, we can actually mimic the benefits of exercise. And when you combine them with exercise, we think you can have an even greater health benefit. But move. Go for a walk. If you're able to do it, lose your breath. Run a little bit. But really, you've got to move and maintain that body strength as well. Lift some weights, stretch, because as Dr. Ruth said earlier today, the most important thing to living a long life is hanging on to the handrail or to good-looking men. They both work. I also looked at other types of hormesis. This is the sauna. I was skeptical that this was true. Of course, heating your body, that's craziness. If we heat yeast cells, they live longer, but a human body, that's craziness. But actually, the data is interesting. I think it's compelling that a number of studies in Scandinavia have found, looking at thousands of mostly businessmen, caveat, that they are protected against heart disease. So I think that that may work, and if nothing else, you'll feel good in the middle of winter. Cold baths. Now, this also I thought was unlikely to work or do anything. But actually, even in my field, these Sirtuin defenses are activated by being cold. There's one in particular called Sirt3. There are 7 in total. Sirt3 comes on when you're cold and helps cells survive and also increases their metabolism. And it gets activated by building brown fat, which can be coaxed into existence and proliferation, typically on your shoulder blades. And we didn't even know this kind of brown fat was there until about a decade ago. So these days, I do that. I jump in a cold pool with my son every weekend after being in the sauna. And at the very least, I feel quite lucky to still be alive. So there's this plant here. It's the French lilac, or goat's rue. It's a less popular name. And it produces a molecule called guanidine. And these guanines actually were found to be quite useful for treating diabetes, type 2 diabetes. And then scientists, actually, chemists, went to work and created better versions of this. There's a biguanide called Metformin, which is the frontline therapy across the world for type 2 diabetes or high blood sugar. And actually, the World Health Organization has declared it an essential medicine for humanity. So what does metformin do? Well, it certainly helps the liver, and it helps your body take up glucose from the bloodstream. That's why it's used as a diabetes treatment. But it's also been found with my colleagues and I to extend a mouse's lifespan. And this pathway, remember I mentioned AMPK, that's one of the 3 main pathways for longevity that we've all discovered. And it has multi-actions. It works on fat, it works on the immune system. And studies of now 100,000+ people around the world who've taken metformin indicate pretty strongly, in my opinion, to protect against many diseases of aging, from cancer to heart disease, even frailty and cancer. So this is really, I think, the closest we have to evidence that there is a drug already out there that can slow aging. And there are many of my colleagues taking this molecule, myself included. Resveratrol, I won't belabor the point, it's all over the news, has been. If you like red wine and you needed an excuse to drink, you're welcome. It's not bad for you in small doses, but the doses that I take are the equivalent every morning to drinking 500 to 1,000 glasses of red wine, and I do not recommend that. So don't do that. But resveratrol seems to be a pretty interesting molecule because what it does is it activates one of these Sirtuin enzymes, and we've discovered that it does this. And we can actually stop the enzyme from doing this in a mouse. And we've shown, though we haven't published yet, that if a mouse can't do this action, resveratrol will not make it live longer anymore. Pretty much proving that our ideas are correct. Now, there are drugs that have been developed, or at least are being developed, that are better than resveratrol, and those have been into phase 2 studies showing efficacy in inflammation, but they remain to be marketed. NAD boosters, if anyone here has been on the internet recently or Googled my name, this will come up. There are a few NAD boosters. You can certainly read more about it if you'd like to pick up a copy of my book. I don't want to go on and on about it. But what's interesting about NAD is that Sirtuin enzymes that I just showed you don't work without NAD. And the levels of NAD, we think, go down as we get older. And so NAD boosters get you your youthful levels of NAD and we think fight back. So some of the evidence comes from mice. These are 20-month-olds mice, sorry about the black mice on a black treadmill, but one of these mice clearly is fitter than the other one, and it's the one that's been drinking NMN in its water. And what we traced this to was that the SIRT1 enzyme, the Sirtuin, in the lining of the blood vessels was responsible, and it was mimicking the effects of exercise. And that's why these untrained mice now ran multi-marathons, and in fact ran so far that the machine stopped running. And we had to rewrite the software because the software didn't anticipate mice running over 3 kilometers. Okay, so we stand at the precipice of an interesting world where what I've told you today is that it's feasible that we will not just slow aging, but we will reverse the aging process. And this is an example. Now, I chose Bill Murray just for the heck of it. It could be anybody, but imagine a world where you get gene therapy when you're young, and these viruses sit in your body lying in wait, they're not on, but if you have an accident, you cut yourself, you break your spine, you damage your eye, you'll get an IV of an antibiotic that will turn on the reprogramming, will make you into basically an axolotl and salamander, regrow what you need to regrow. You'll go back to be young. We don't know how young yet. And then you go off the antibiotic. And perhaps we could keep resetting the body every decade or so. That's a possible future that our children or our great-grandchildren may actually see. Now, remember my father, who was born in 1939. Now, he's now 80, and he was not looking forward to his old age. My mother died from lung cancer. She lived a terrible life as well. His mother, as I mentioned, died a very terrible life. We have heart disease riddled in our Ashkenazi Jew family. And I also have terrible genes, massive cholesterol. So my father surviving to 80 is a world's first, as far as we know, in our family. But what he gives us is hope that we can intervene. So my father is on essentially the same program that I am. It does involve the things I've told you today and a few other tweaks, which if you want to read on page 302, you're welcome to. I wrote all those down. I know people would be interested. And also write to me if you'd like. But my father is a beacon of hope, as is Dr. Ruth, that we don't have to accept aging. We don't have to accept just the way it goes. The same way we never accepted cancer or heart disease as just the way it goes. And just this August, my father, who I'm showing you here in the middle picture, we went to Africa together, and he climbed the mountains in Uganda to visit the gorillas. And we explored the great journey of humanity from fossils all the way up the Great Rift Valley. And I'll tell you that was when I realized what I was working on was that important. It becomes very personal, actually, when it's part of your family. And with the smile on my father's face, you can see here, he's gone from a grumpy guy to a guy that just loves life. He just ordered his dream car on a wait list at 80. This is not the kind of guy that you'd think would be old, but he has no aches or pains. He started a new career a few years ago, and he's looking forward to meeting his great-grandkids. And that's a life I want us all to be able to look forward to. It'll be a world where we'll have a lot less expenditure for healthcare, and the wisdom of our elders will be admired and absorbed by our youth that really need our advice as this world becomes more complicated and scary for them. And I want to say thank you all for spending your night with me and the Trottiers for making this all possible. Thank you.
It's a really, really good book. Highly recommended. Hopefully you guys will start doing what we now know. So good luck to all of us. Go grab a book. I got mine from Amazon. Good luck.